autumn of 1987 that Emma Caldwell first noticed the old painting. She had come to the small village of Greywood seeking peace, hoping to mend a broken heart and escape the bustle of city life. The air was crisp, the leaves turning golden and red, and the streets quiet beyond what she had expected. She found a modest cottage to rent on the outskirts, an old stone house with creaky floors and windows overlooking rolling fields and dense woodland beyond. On her first evening, as dusk settled, she wandered into the cottage's little attic, drawn by the dust and half-forgotten artifacts stored there by the previous owners. Among wooden crates and yellowed letters, she found a painting hidden under cloth, a portrait of a woman, set in an ornate frame, the edges curling with age. The woman in the portrait stared out with deep, haunting eyes, dark hair coiled at her neck, lips slightly parted, as if she might speak at any moment. Emma felt a chill. Something about the face tugged at her memory, though she could not place why. She hung the painting in the living room, thinking it might bring a hint of character to the otherwise empty space. Over the next days, she settled into a quiet routine, morning tea by the window, walks in the forest, reading in the evenings. Yet the painting felt alive. At first she blamed it on fatigue or stress, but slowly she realized subtle changes. The woman's lips seemed ever so slightly different in expression. The shadows under her eyes deepened. Sometimes the painting looked as though it were watching Emma. Late at night, Emma sometimes lay in bed and felt she could hear a faint whisper, though she would open her eyes and see nothing. One night, unable to sleep, Emma rose and wandered to the living room. The room was moonlit. She stood before the painting, and for a moment, the woman's eyes seemed to flicker. Emma gasped and stumbled back. Then the whisper came, "Help me." She could not tell whether the sound was in her ears or in the air. Her heart pounding, Emma turned on the lamp. But the painting was exactly as before, the same haunting gaze, the same still figure. She convinced herself it was only her imagination. But the next morning, she found a small tear in the corner of the painting's canvas. Something she was certain had not been there the night before. Curiosity and fear battled in her mind. Emma began to research the cottage. She learned it was once owned by the Morgans, a family who had lived there many decades ago. The last known occupant was a woman named Charlotte Morgan, who died under mysterious circumstances in 1924. Locals said she had been reclusive, obsessed with art and spirits. Some whispered that she practiced occult rituals to preserve her youth. Determined to find answers, Emma visited the village archives. She found an old photograph of Charlotte Morgan and, to her shock, recognized the same face from the painting. The resemblance was unmistakable. But the painting was older than any photograph. The stylistic clues suggested the portrait was done about a century earlier. How could that be? Did Charlotte somehow channel her image into the painting? Or was this some family heirloom? Emma also discovered Charlotte's diary entries. In one entry, Charlotte wrote that she had discovered a ritual to bind a soul into canvas, to live eternally within paint and pigment. She claimed she would never be forgotten. The village dismissed it as delusion, or worse, her final descent into madness. The diary ended abruptly, with pages torn out. Later that night, Emma returned to the painting. She held Charlotte's diary before it, reading aloud one line. "Let the skin of the painting breathe, let the eyes awaken. By blood and by will, bind the soul henceforth." The moment she spoke the words, the room's temperature dropped sharply. The lamp's flame flickered wildly. Emma recoiled as the figure in the painting appeared to step forward, her hand reaching beyond the frame, translucent, grasping at emptiness. Emma screamed and pressed her hand against her mouth. In a flash, the figure vanished back into the frame. Emma fled from the room, heart hammering. Over the next days, Emma avoided the living room. She slept ever more fitfully, but she could feel pressure behind her eyelids, sensed that something followed her even into dreams. She started to see Charlotte's eyes in the darkness. One day she tried to move the painting outside, but it would not budge, no matter how she pushed or levered it. It felt fixed to the wall by some unseen force. Emma then resolved to destroy it. Late at night, she took a hammer and struck the corner of the canvas. To her horror, the hammer passed right through the painting as though entering a void. She gasped. She could feel a cold wind swirl from inside it, snuffing candles, rattling frames. The room went dark. When the lights returned, The painting was intact, undamaged. She sank to her knees, trembling. At that moment, she heard a soft moan. She looked, and there before her, shimmering in the air, the ghostly figure of Charlotte Morgan stood between her and the painting. Charlotte's lips moved soundlessly, but Emma understood the words in her mind. "You freed me." The spirit faded, and Emma felt, in that instant, a weight lift from the room. The painting's eyes softened. The face seemed peaceful. Emma wept, for she knew the binding was broken. She dragged the painting out, carried it to the forest, and left it face up in a small clearing at dusk. She said, aloud, "Be free, Charlotte. Go on beyond." She walked away. Over her shoulder she felt a breeze, like a whisper of thanks. The next morning, the painting was gone. No remains, no trace, just empty earth. Emma stayed in the cottage for a few more weeks, though it no longer felt haunted. She planted flowers, cleaned the rooms, and watched the seasons turn. She sometimes thought she saw Charlotte's silhouette in the forest edge, but when she blinked, it vanished. Years later, Emma would look back and wonder whether she had dreamed it all. Maybe that odd painting was only her grief and imagination. But deep down she believed she had carried a soul toward peace. In time, Emma found love again, moved to a new town, but the memory of Greywood and the haunted portrait stayed with her always. A chilling reminder that some art holds more than paint, more than memory. Some paintings can trap the living, and sometimes, with courage, one can set them free.